Let's start with Alejandro in Louisiana.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, Alejandro.
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, don't do
How's it
that to
going?
me. Are you in Los Angeles?
I'm in Los Angeles, yes.
God damn it. Okay, it says LA. Oh, fine. Hi, Alejandro. What do you want to talk about?
How's it going today?
I'm warm, gratefully, and I've got some nice boiled water here, so I'm happy for that.
Melting.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
I'm glad. You can come. Well, I've had conversations with a lot of new atheists, and before I really get rolling, I wanted to define things. Classic atheists I describe as people who believe there is no God. That's a classic atheist. Okay. New atheism might really trace back to about 2005, and those are the ones who lack a belief in God. And I was wondering if there's any way we could really discern whether new atheists were more of a condition than an argument. The idea being, is there something specific about them that makes them think differently?
Sure. I mean, I can tell you for myself, I can't speak for everybody. And the interesting thing about labels is they're changing, and we need to recognize that, you know, as language changes, you know, our usage of it changes. But at least for me, I would tell you that the reason I wouldn't say that no gods exist is because the definition of God is so incredibly fluid that someone could define a very benign God into existence. I could say God is this pen that I'm holding. It doesn't. I mean, I can't deny the existence of this pen. I'm holding it. You know. So I don't see a whole lot of use in a blanket "there are no gods." I think I have to wait until I hear what the claim is. That way, I can listen and judge whether or not, you know, I think that God exists, depending on the claim. That's why it's really informed by wanting to make sure that we're listening and not talking at you.
It's also a case of if you have a Venn diagram, all the people who actively disbelieve in, disbelieve in gods are contained inside the larger circle of people who lack belief. So the new atheist definition is more inclusive.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. It's more a subset than it is a separate entity.
And what did you call those people who lacked belief before there were new atheists?
Well, they didn't really exist. I mean, it wasn't really an idea.
Sure they
the
did.
Closest I've found. The closest I've found is autistic, really.
Well, I think that we might be able to shatter that one right now. Dennis, did you exist before 2005?
Yes. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, I have to assume people said, "I don't believe you," way back in time.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of years ago, they must have said, "I don't believe you." That's all lacking belief is. You say, I don't believe what you just said.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to my point,
sure.
The idea is they weren't really a movement. Prior to 2005, roughly speaking, atheists that I spoke to at a regular basis were, there is no God, and these are the reasons I believe there is no God. Okay. As opposed to the, people who post 2005 who simply say, I lack a belief, I'm unconvinced, and their way of argument, exactly what you said about defining God. There's this difficulty with definitions. How do we define things? I mean,
sure. So my
favorite example is.
Well, hold on just a second. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. Is this call more to talk about the rhetoric around it, or is this call to talk about kind of what you believe and why? Like, I just want to make sure that I know where we're going with this call.
Well, before we really approach the problem, I want to understand if we can actually discuss it. And for example, you said you had a problem defining what God is. Now, that's a good example because definitions I've found that atheists have a problem with. New atheists, have a problem with. They want to define everything empirically rather than abstractly. For example, one of the simple tests that gets tossed around is there such a thing as the tallest tree? Yeah. Is there a tallest tree? Would you say, yes, there is a tallest tree?
Okay.
Sure. Why not?
Okay. All right. So based on the fact that there is the tallest tree, can we conclude that there is no tree taller than that tallest tree?
Yeah, it's by definition.
Okay.
Are you moving into the ontological argument?
We're being led down some
yes.
sort of path here. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. A lot of the new atheists I've talked to are very, very.
You're talking to us right now.
Okay.
Go
So
ahead.
at any rate, if you ask for a definition of God, and very simply, of course, God is defined by the classic arguments. God is the first cause. You know, God created the cosmos.
God is defined by you as that. You can't
That's
speak
the
for
ontological
everyone.
argument.
Right. And as you're presenting it, make sure that you're not speaking for everyone in existence, because lots of people have definitions for God that are not yours, which is why we put that caveat out there. So if you're presenting your evidence for the God that you believe in, I'm glad that you are giving it the attributes that you believe that it has. I just want to make sure that when you're going through this, that you understand that we're listening to Alejandro. And Alejandro is not every theist, because there are lots of claims about deities, right?
Right.
Okay.
So we're starting with things that we can all agree on.
Okay.
Do you agree that there is a first cause?
No.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah.
And you don't know why?
Why?
No, I don't know why.
Yeah,
I'm okay with not knowing.
Why would you suppose there's what?
I didn't say so. So I think you're trying to pin me on this idea that I'm saying there is no first cause. All I'm saying is I don't know. I'm happy to listen to people who spend their lives looking into cosmology and scientists who study how the universe. But I'm definitely just a lay person, and so for me to claim that I have knowledge like that, I couldn't. So my best answer is I don't know.
Well, the problem is I don't know is automatically the wrong answer.
No.
Why?
What?
I don't know.
No,
hold on.
I am accurately reporting our state of knowledge. Our state of knowledge is we don't know. Anything else is a lie.
Okay.
And really quick, before we keep going down this thread, I do want to just make sure that I call this out. I've worked in special ed for many, many years. And the way you used the word autistic was not okay. Mm-hmm. So if you can refrain from doing that in the future, that'll make sure that you can stay on this call, okay?
Sure. Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Go ahead.
So let's explore whether I don't know can be the right answer. Let's pretend
it is. I'm the only person who knows what's in my head, and I know I don't know. You have to take that. You have to accept that answer.
You don't know. You don't know. That's not part of reality.
Yes, it is. My brain does not contain the knowledge of where the universe came from.
Okay. Let's look at this example, okay?
Hold on.
Imagine there's a jar.
Hold on, Alejandro.
Do you agree with me?
Yes.
That you don't, that my brain does not contain knowledge of where the universe came from?
Well, if your brain does not contain knowledge of where the universe came from, on what grounds do you reject my answer?
No, I'm not. I don't reject your answer. I'm saying I don't know.
I do reject your answer, Alejandro. I do reject your answer. Just because I don't know doesn't mean that you do. Yeah. You're making the claim, and when you make the claim, you need to back it up. See, I think the problem that we're having here is Dennis is speaking about himself. Alejandro, you're speaking ontologically. Whether or not we exist, there is an answer. But to say that you have that answer, you need to provide evidence for it. So you're going to use the gumball analogy, which is fantastic. I know another analogy. Have you heard of phlogiston?
Phlogiston, yes, that was the substance in space, kind of like ether.
Right. And so phlogiston was thought to be what causes fire, right? And so something that was burned was considered dephlogenated, right?
Right.
Right. So scientists spent a long time trying to isolate phlogiston, and ether is another great example. Also, the humors, right? And the humors being what causes health issues. All of those were people who said that they had the answer, and they went out to try and assert and find proof of that answer, and they couldn't. Right. And instead, it took us learning and studying and following the evidence where it took us to get to our current understanding of physics and of medicine. And so I think that is a great example of why I would advise against making a claim about the beginning of the universe unless you have a good reason to. So what is your good reason?
Well, I'm going over that with you.
Okay.
We can imagine a jar of marbles on your desk, okay? Gumballs, whatever you want to do, okay?
Sure.
Now, there's either an odd number of marbles or there's an odd number of marbles. Would you? Yes, even or odd. Would you agree that if there's a jar of marbles on your desk, the number is
Alejandro.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, and then Alejandro, if you were to ask Dennis and I, if you were to say, if Dennis were to say the number of marbles is odd, and Dennis knows that for a fact, do I accept Dennis's claim? And I say, no, I don't accept it. That doesn't mean that I think it's even. This is another example of what we just went over, and that is that withholding your answer until you count the damn marbles is important. That's what we're doing.
Well, the point is, you saying you don't know is not the right answer.
What do you mean it's not the right answer?
It's not odd or even. It's if the answer is odd or the answer is even, then among the answers, I don't know is not a extant answer to what we're going to get when we get to the bottom of when we actually count the marbles. So understood,
when you count the marbles,
Alejandro.
the answer will not be
Alejandro, that doesn't mean that it's wrong.
No,
it does mean it's wrong.
No, it's an absolutely truthful statement.
Yeah, the statement is about our knowledge, not the ontological fact.
Right.
You're asking us what we understand, what we know, and what we're willing to accept.
Right. You're asking me about the contents of my brain, and I'm telling you what the contents of my brain are.
You're conflating two different things, Alejandro. An ontological argument about what exists outside of us, whether what happens when you count all the marbles, and the other is our knowledge, our understanding based on how we've come to learn about the universe. That it has everything to do with us. Do you understand those two sides of it?
Well, now you're arguing that atheism is a belief and has nothing to do with reality.
No. Atheism is not a belief.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not presenting another different thing.
And
you're
also
presenting a God. We're not presenting anything.
And also, if that's how you want to, if you want to define belief that way, fine. I really don't give a fuck. I want to get to what you believe and why you're trying to shirk the burden of evidence that you need to provide in order to justify your belief.
Well, I'm getting to that, but first we're having to have discussion about the discussion.
So we're done with that.
Sorry, we're
Get
not on
to
your
it.
script, but
yeah, we're
have
well
to
into the
accept
call.
our answers.
Yeah, we're well into the call. Either you're going to get into it or we're going to move on to the next call.
Okay, well, like I said, you wanted to move to the definition of God. God is the first cause. Okay. So,
why does there have to be a first cause?
Okay.
Why does?
Because everything.
What made the God?
Cause is contingent on the first cause.
What made the God?
Yeah, that's.
Well,
Dennis had.
That's like saying there's something a tree taller than the tallest tree.
No, so it's reducto ad absurdum.
You just said.
No, it's
nothing.
reducto.
I'm sorry. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with an infinite regress. We can have an infinite regress. Everything has a cause.
So if God needs a God, the God's God needs a God. Just turtles the whole way down.
That's a possibility.
No, you're arguing.
Sure, that's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, have you considered?
We don't know
that so with that whole uncaused cause, have you experienced an uncaused cause before?
Now, that's the
Can you
experiential argument. We're pivoting to whether I've experienced God. That's a different.
can you point to one that you weren't there or you didn't experience? Can you please show me what I have to compare your answer to when it comes to the beginning of the universe to, because right now all it is a special exception. All it is according to that argument, right? Everything has a cause except for my special thing that doesn't need to follow the rules.
Right. You create a rule and then immediately break it.
I mean, it's not my fault that your argument sucks, dude.
No, I just made that point with the tallest tree. There's a tallest tree, there's the deepest ocean, there's the biggest rock.
That has nothing to do with anything.
No, how are those the same?
No,
Yeah.
that's exactly the point. We know there's no the first cause means that's like the tallest tree or the deepest ocean. There's
No, it's the firstest.
I see no relationship.
okay. When I say there's a tallest tree, we agree there's a tallest tree.
Yeah.
Right? And
Sure.
there's no tree taller than the tallest tree.
Sure.
Otherwise, we see causality. Okay, so everything gets caused by something else. And eventually there is a first cause, just like there is a tallest tree and there
Okay.
Oh,
Nope.
Okay. It sounds like you're waiting to tell us the thing that we've already been responding to you about, Alejandro. So if you want to go on with the first cause, I get it. The answer here is, I'm sorry if it sounds unsatisfactory to you, but I don't know. I don't know. To get a little further into it, why do you know? So even if I were to grant you, okay, cool, there's a first mover, just so we could grant it. Who's to say that first mover didn't blow itself up in the process? Does that have anything, does that say anything about the God that you believe in?
Well, yes, it's maximally great.
No. Why do you say that?
Yeah. Who told you that?
Any act greater than creating everything from nothing. Ergo, God is maximally great.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay,
Now you're just defining it into existence. Damn.
Is, and
that's
also,
impressive.
Also, Alejandro, can you hold greatness?
Yeah.
You can?
Can I hold greatness?
Yes.
No.
Can you touch it?
Well, I can't exactly smell yellow either, so I don't know where.
Exactly. Because it's not a noun.
Oh, so you're arguing that abstract things don't exist. That
I'm arguing, Alejandro, that abstract concepts like descriptors are things that we use to describe nouns, that we describe things. If you're pointing to a descriptor and trying to treat it like a noun, you're using words wrong. Because what is the wettest thing?
Well, I don't.
What is the toest thing?
That's the wettest. Very good point. Very, very good point. You're arguing it has to describe something. So it's like one seed, 2 books, 3 cantaloupes.
Right. Now, let's see. How about 1 Daffy Duck plus 1 Daffy Duck? That equals 2 Daffy Ducks. Does that mean 2 Daffy Ducks exist in the universe?
No, because that's
in our universe. Because I just added 2 Daffy Ducks. I don't think you're going to argue with me that I'm wrong about that. What that shows is just because you can point to and use those abstract concepts does not mean that they exist in the world. They're adjectives. That's all they are. And so you need to divorce the adjective from the noun if you're talking about a noun. If you're talking about smelliness existing as some platonic ideal, then no, that's not how that works.
Well, then we don't have anything as logic. You just set the board on fire.
Well, hold on. I just set the board on fire because you don't get to make your point. Please explain.
Well, no, I will be happy to. Okay, so greatness is like
an adjective.
Oh, it's an abstract idea.
Right.
Right. It exists in our heads.
A great boxer or a great car or a great idea or a great book or a great pool. The great is a concept in and of itself, and we separate that out kind of the same way we say there's 1 book, there's 2 cars, there's 3 cameras.
Sure.
4 boxes. So we separate the concept out, and that's where we have than pure abstraction.
Okay, and just so you're aware, I don't want you to think that I'm trying to dive. I want you to know I have an eye on the clock. It's been 25 minutes, and so I want to make sure that we can get to it. So you've been leading us by the nose. I want to make sure you have time to make your point.
Well, like I said, we asked about the definition of God. We've got the first cause, and the first cause is maximally great. That's the description.
Where did this maximally great thing come from?
It exists as necessity. It can't not.
Why?
Everything is contingent on it.
Great is a judgment call. There's no
exactly. I can think
there's no intrinsic quality of greatness.
Agreed. I can think that my car is great. That doesn't mean that other people are necessarily going to agree. I can have a friend that I think is great. That doesn't mean that there aren't people who disagree. But that said, it sounds like you are using adjectives instead of nouns. And if you say it can't exist because it has to exist, and because it has to exist, it can't not exist, you've worked your way into a circle, and I can't get you out of that circadian.
That circular.
Let me ask you another way. Can there not be a tall tree?
So you're again assuming that trees exist, and I'm granting that. I'm not granting gods exist. And because of that, pointing to the adjective of the trees is apples and oranges with gods, because you don't have any gods to show me. And so I can't tell you what the least great God is compared to the most great God. You have to show that they exist at all before you can make that judgment.
Okay, well,
I hope that helps. But if you have more you want to talk about, feel free to call in. If you want to talk to other people about that specific subject, feel free to join our Discord, because we have a ton of really, really awesome people who would probably love to talk to you too.
Okay, well, it's been fun talking to you.
Good to talking to you too. Take care, Alejandro.
That was interesting.
How do you feel about that, man?
We weren't on his script.
No.
We kept... I suspect he read this argument somewhere and thought he would just lead us down the path, and we'd be forced to agree with him on all his premises and stuff like that. And no, plans do not survive contact with the enemy. Neither do arguments.
Exactly. I mean, it's not my fault that he's trying to define adjectives as nouns, and the idea that abstract concepts can't exist unless there's this, because that's what it's implying. Plato had this whole idea that there's this invisible Platonic realm, and in the Platonic realm there's the perfect each thing, there's the perfect apple, and all apples in existence are really drawing their appleness from the perfect apple. Right. And so when he's talking about these adjectives, he's treating them as if they're nouns in the Platonic realm, and it just doesn't stand up. It doesn't make sense. I don't believe in Platonism, and I definitely don't believe that is a convincing argument. All it does is make people go, wow. And the reason it does that is because we don't talk about it enough, and especially in English, we use adjectives as nouns, right?
Yeah, and this was a weird construction of the argument. It suddenly this maximally great thing gets pasted in. It was really weird. That belongs to a different argument.
It does. It sounds like he's working through the ontological argument, though.
Yeah.
And it is interesting, and it is a good point that he brought up, that there's a difference between our knowledge and what actually exists. And what we do is we compare what we understand to be true about the world to the world, and if it bears out that what we understand about the world is reflected in the world, then okay, that is a true thing.
Right. I mean, if he said, okay, there's a tallest tree. Okay, is there a most advanced species? Let's ignore how evolution does not say advanced, but go, okay, sure. But then when when you say God or cause, we don't know.
Yeah.
We have no idea.
Agreed.
How is one cause better than another, greater than another? It's just weird.
It is. And we had a couple really, really good people call out in the live chat, and I want to make sure that I point out that that was a presuppositional argument as well.
Yes.
He was presupposing that God existed, and that God existed and had to exist and it could not exist. And
well, those guys like to tell you what's in your own head. And
unfortunately,
I really hate that.
Me too.